Good morning. Lately, we've been talking a little bit off and on about things going on in our country. Of course, a big, passionate fighting going on about elections and all. And I've mentioned before, but I love Daniel 4, the Most High ruleth, and he sets over the kingdom, the basest of men. He puts who he wants. That doesn't mean we shouldn't vote. That doesn't mean we shouldn't pray. That doesn't mean we shouldn't care. But it does sometimes mean we get what we deserve. And but all that put aside, I just wanted to take a minute and I'm going to talk about governments and the Bible and just where does it all fit in? I'm going to be in the book of Daniel and Daniel chapter 7 and then maybe in John chapter 6 a little bit. But before we get there, I want to throw out a thought in regards to where we are. My wife and I are not passionate, tooth and nail fighting health fooders. We try to keep fruits and vegetables in our diet. We try to buy organic fruits and vegetables, and typically we will. There's times we won't. I'll drink water out of the sink in the kitchen or the bathroom, whatever. But normally we're drinking filtered water, bottled water, and of course it's out of plastic bottles a lot of times, and that we know that's a no-no. But we're not crazy about it. I'll have no problem. I took some of our guest speakers a while back to Sizzler for lunch, and I went and got a brownie and covered it with ice cream, chocolate ice cream, and then put chocolate syrup on top of it, and then put some strawberries around it. It just seemed like a good blend. And so I'm not a fanatic. I'm not a no sugar, no preservatives crazy. I'm not against those people. I just don't have enough character. At 67, I'm going to enjoy the years I've got left, at least until my body doesn't let me enjoy them anymore. You know that does happen. But some things my wife and I have noticed, and I'm thinking mainly some of you young people, that you might consider. My whole life growing up, let's just say from as far back as I can remember, up until I graduated from high school, I knew one person, possibly a second, that had some kind of handicap or physical disability. And I was not always in a small school. My sophomore, junior, and senior year, I was in a small high school of 200 kids. But prior to that, our high school probably had 3,000 or 4,000 people. And so I was in a very large elementary school, very large middle school. And then my ninth grade year, I think I remember it as being 1,000 students. It may not have been, but we had a big school, very big school. And, like our basketball team, that's how, the things that stick in my mind. There was a freshman team, and then there was a C team, and then there was a junior varsity team, and a B team, and a varsity team. And that was all boys basketball. And so we had a lot of kids and a big school. But all my life, maybe in elementary school, I'm not sure, there was somebody that possibly had some kind of physical handicap. And then in my latter 3 years of high school, I was in a small school, and there was a young man in our school that had something, maybe wasn't quite, he was in a normal public school and in our classes, but there was something not quite, he had some kind of handicap, and I couldn't even tell you what it was. But all those thousands of kids, no handicaps. And look around us today. I've heard statistics that 1 in 5 kids have developed some kind of autism, some kind of handicap, and 1 in 5, that's a lot. And then you go to childhood cancers. Growing up, I never knew of one child with a serious disease, not one. One teacher, out of all the teachers I had, one teacher, I want to say it was my 6th grade teacher, she had leukemia. That's the only person that I knew of that had cancer. Well, now, just when my son had cancer, because, things pop up and you notice things, but my son had cancer. A pastor I know in another city, his son, same age as my son, he had cancer. And then another young man in another city I know, all 3 of these young men, all families in the ministry, and they all 3 about the same age group. They all had cancer, and cancer is a very common thing now, and thankfully our medical world is giving people a lot of victory over it. But still, the point is, there are mental and physical handicaps, and there are diseases. And I don't follow this, and I'm not a nut over it. But my wife and I've talked on many occasions that something in the last 50 years is wrong, or maybe 70 years. Now, it could be our water, it could be vaccinations, it could be food, the stuff in food. I have no idea. Could be our air, but there's only so many variables in our lives. And so it's the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, and then the stuff that doctors put into our bodies. And so I want to encourage you to be conscious. I heard something just recently about a big soda manufacturer, Coke, Pepsi, whatever, that they were a main they know were a big donator to. They donated large amounts of money to somebody that worked with heart disease, and you're thinking diabetes and heart disease and Coke or Pepsi or Dr. Pepper that I drink, and I drink Diet Dr. Pepper. So what's worse, the sugar in the Dr. Pepper or the chemicals in the Diet Dr. Pepper? My medical doctor says the sugar's worse, and my chiropractor says that the chemicals are worse, and they both agree I should drink water, and I do some of the time. And so again, I'm not a nut on this, but my children are grown, and they are facing these decisions. They've got the next 40 years to live, and their children, and they need to make these decisions. And I want to just challenge you. We ought to consider something is wrong, and something needs worked on. And I think we should be concerned. I think all of us understand from COVID that there is a lot of money in the pharmaceutical industry influencing politics. That is indisputable. And the people who make the drugs should not be able to buy the people who approve the drugs. And I'm not saying who bought what, but we just all know there's some hand holding in the circles there somewhere. It's like Mark Zuckerberg, I think, was the one who admitted now that pressure from the White House on him to censor what got out on social media. That's control. Do we want the government controlling what news gets around? That's what communism does. I mean, Stalin, Lenin, Hitler, all those guys, they all wanted to control the news. They were government-controlled newspapers. We don't want that in America. We want freedom of the press. But he said he got call after call from, I don't know if he said Biden, but from the White House. And we should consider, but the issue is somebody was trying to play down certain parts, and somebody was trying to play up, and the pharmaceutical companies were, of course, pushing to get vaccinations. And now looking back, we realize, well, we made some big mistakes, and there's a lot of wrong that was done, and we should just be very much on guard. And I want to encourage you. We're not anti-vaccination. My wife and I, our kids got shots. They didn't get them all. I was in the doctor's office with one of my boys when he was getting the physical before he started playing high school sports, and they wanted to give him a shot. And I said, "What's that for?" And and they told me. I said, "He's not taking that shot." They said, "Well, it's a really good idea." I said, "He's not taking that shot because he isn't sleeping around with a bunch of girls, and he doesn't need that, or whatever. He didn't need that shot." Of course, they disagree. We parents don't always know what kids are doing. Well, some parents do, and but there are, so we pick and choose. And of our 4 children, I don't know if any of them are the same, but I think I want to encourage you that have children, think, and look at the, if the, and I do eat junk food. I picked up a box of chocolate chip cookies from Costco the other day, and it'll take a while to get through those, but and I'll eat a breakfast burrito from the fast food place on a Sunday morning with my class, my Sunday school class. But I want to encourage you that are raising kids. How many times this week did your kids eat vegetables? How many times did your kids eat something that you know is healthy, that didn't take 25 ingredients on the back of it? And people know I make these vegetable smoothies and organic carrots and organic apples and organic baby spinach and organic apple juice and organic lemons. I guess they're organic. We pick them off our tree. We don't do anything to our tree but water it. But it's a healthy vegetable smoothie, and I put other stuff in it as well, bran and chia seeds and other stuff. And I don't know if it's all perfectly healthy, but I'm trying a little bit. But I want to challenge you. Your children, they're living in a world where there's an awful lot of disease, a lot of stuff that we don't know why. But I'll say this, in the last 60 years, something has changed. And you that are my age, you know we drank out of garden hoses. Nobody thought twice about drinking out of a garden hose. And maybe it was garden hoses that kept us healthy. I have no idea. I remember riding my bicycle to the beach. My parents could tell you how far, but we lived in Thousand Oaks, and we would drive over to Malibu Beach or one of the main beaches along over the mountains. And we'd ride our bicycles. We'd meet, my friends and I meet 6 in the morning. We'd ride over the mountains. I have no idea how far it was, but it took several hours to get there on a bike. And along the way, there's a park. And if we wanted something to drink and there wasn't a drinking fountain, we'd suck the water out of a sprinkler. And you might think, oh, that's disgusting. Well, I'm 67 and I'm okay. We're drinking out of a hose, but I don't know what our hoses are made of now. I don't know what water's in those hoses now. I'm not defending anybody. I'm just saying we were able to relax a lot more back then and think. But I think when we talk about politics, we should think who is buying our political leaders and look into some things a little bit. Now, with all that said, and I know everybody's got opinions, and I'm certainly not saying I have any strong, this is right, this is wrong, quit taking aspirin, quit taking. The other day, the doctor, the doctor said, the doctor said, no, it was one of my friends at church. He said, take some whatever, aspirin, ibuprofen, whatever. We don't take anything here. I didn't know the difference between an aspirin and a Tylenol and an ibuprofen and there's a half dozen little pills that are aspirin-like. I don't know what's what. We just don't take much here in our house. My wife and I we're concerned about the mess we're getting ourselves into with drugs, pain drugs, and all that stuff. And again, not to say it's wrong for you, but we're pretty careful. And one doctor said it'd be good if I took those half-size aspirins, and so we had to go looking around and find some. I didn't even know what I was looking for, but so we're a little guarded. But I want to encourage you, think through who. That there was a time when nobody thought anything about smoking, but then we realized, that tobacco industry, there's a lot of evil in it. Well, I wish they'd figure that out with the liquor industry. I can't even imagine that people approve liquor. I can't believe you can drive to a bar and drink. Or during COVID, we went to Red Robin one time. They were bringing food out. And right there at the Red Robin, you could sit in your car and order your food and your booze. I don't know what booze Red Robin sells, but they'll bring it out to your car. So I can sit in my car and drink my whatever and then drive home. And liquor is horrible. I can't even believe how tolerant people are of booze. But the fact is, we should think. We should think who's buying off who's paying who. Now, with all that being said, I want to just read a verse or two in Daniel chapter 7. In the first year of Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matter. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, 4 winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. The first was like a lion, and had an eagle's wing, and I beheld the wings thereof. They were plucked, and was lifted from the earth, and on and on. Then verse 5, and behold another beast, the second was like unto a bear, and it raised itself up on one side, and on and on. And then verse 6, after this I beheld, and lo, another, like unto a leopard, which had upon his head, on the back of it, 4 wings, as of a fowl. Verse 7, and after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, it had great iron teeth, and devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with its feet, and on and on. Now, those beasts represent nations. They represent countries. And some people put it as Babylon, and then the Persians, and the Medo-Persian, and the Grecians, and on and on and on. I kind of lean toward, for those of you who study that stuff, I think this is pretty likely to be things going on during the tribulation, right before the tribulation, and I pushed these things back a little bit, but I'm not sure I could even defend that a whole lot. But regardless, everybody that I know of, except those people who just say the Bible is a fairy tale, every Bible believing preacher I know of says these represent nations. Now, you notice there was not one nation. You can go back earlier in Daniel, and he has another vision, and the nations are described as a ram and so many horns, and he smashed into this one, and he killed that one, and these animals, beasts, and things. But here's the thing, there's never been a government represented by an image of a warm, kind, gracious lady or a thoughtful, attentive, gentle man. They're always beasts. They're always beasts. And you can go down to the Revelation and you find the great whore of Babylon. And Babylon, it's committed adultery with the kings of the earth. And of course, that's a nation. And it's a wicked and a powerful nation. And then it gets crushed. And what the nations in the Word of God are consistently destructive, animalistic, out of control, violent beasts, and that's just been that's throughout the scriptures. We, my age and older than me, we've seen some pretty good things in America, and I think it's because we had some people who had a little reverence for the Bible. Not that they're all Christians, not that they're all good people, but they had some reverence for the Bible. A lot of people. If you remember Sodom and Gomorrah, all it was going to take was 10 people with some righteousness, and the whole place would have been spared. And that would have been Noah and his wife and 4 children and their spouse. And that would have got the 10. And obviously they didn't have enough. But governments and this matter of righteousness, we need to understand we've enjoyed a very unique era in American history, in world history. A time of prosperity, a time of order, and not that there was no crime and no evil. Of course, there's always, as long as there's people, there's going to be crime and evil. But we've had a great nation, and we've had a great history, and it is getting more and more corrupt. Now, the further we get from the Bible, the more corrupt it's going to be. But let me just summarize this with this thought. Don't be surprised when the government is evil, premeditated, violent, a government that takes away your possessions. I have a friend that was in Cuba, Elmer Fernandez. He was a boy when Castro took over. And he said that they came in, they took businesses away, and they took homes away. And they started putting people into homes and it was just, we own you. And be very guarded when you start thinking about who you vote for, about somebody who's going to make a business do something. And I don't believe that way. I believe in freedom. And obviously in a residential area where I live, they're not going to let you do some things. But out where we lived before, we were on 6.5 acres. And where we lived before that, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres around us. And if my next door neighbor wanted to put in a brewery or a septic plant, it's his property. Now, if the city says you got to get the vote of your neighbors, all right, I legally have a right to vote. I don't want a septic plant next door to me. But if he gets the votes and the county or city leaders, whoever lets him, that's his property. And I'm a passionate freedom lover. Freedom always has a price tag. The freedom I have to have a church also gives the freedom to the guy next door to sell some things I don't approve of. But this thing of freedom, be very careful about voting in people who want to control. In our little Wildomar here, we had something come up some years ago, 10 years ago or so, and they surveyed the community, and it was voted down almost unanimously. And then the city leaders went ahead and did it anyway. They kept bringing it up for a vote and found a way to. And I don't follow. I think I've got enough to do. I'm not going to worry about them. I'll pray. I'll vote. Whatever. But man, a lot of our politicians, they're animals. They do not care what the citizen thinks. These people in Sacramento and Washington, they're supposed to represent us. Most of them don't. Most of them represent their own agenda. And so you hope you can find somebody that thinks like you and vote for them. So there's somebody up there that thinks like you. But if our community votes somebody in, they're to represent us in this community. And they're not supposed to run our country. We've given them a job. And with our permission, they do these things. And when they don't do it right, we fire them. And there's a bunch of people need fired. My father-in-law, I laughed when the first time I heard it, but I think he's right. He said we need to vote them all out, because if they weren't crooked when they got in, they're crooked by the time they're ready to get out. And that was just his opinion. Just vote them all out and try starting over again. And it's not very intellectual or analytical, but there's some people you thought were pretty sharp that got into politics, and they turned out way the other side of things. So number one, don't be surprised when the governments are corrupt. Number two, vote carefully. I think we should vote freedom. I think we should vote leave us alone. I think that's how I think. That's just me. God put the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden so Adam and Eve could pick or not. It was their choice. God did not force them. He forced Jonah, but I've thought through the Bible how many times did God force somebody into something, and he forced Jonah. Jesus let Judas choose to follow him as a disciple or to betray him. He let him have the choice. And when he had risen from the dead, appeared to the disciples, Peter says, I go fishing. And the other disciples said, we'll go with you. Jesus let him go back to that life. And then he's on the shore saying, hey, how's the fishing going, guys? And you know the story. But I've said this before. I'm going to vote pro-Israel because of Genesis 12. I'm going to vote pro-life because of Exodus 20. And if there is no pro-life candidate, there's very few people as pro-life as Bible believers. But get the closest you can. And then number three, I think the family. In Genesis and in Ephesians 5 and other places, God talks about the home. God loves the family. And I think we should vote for people who are pro-family, pro-morality. And then last, I think we should vote pro-freedom. I like the idea that every one of you that has children should get a way that you could get a tax credit or a voucher or whatever, that you could take your children and put them in any school you want to. And these folks who are in a rough area and the schools are horrible and a mess, why couldn't somebody start a school and have that money, instead of going to a school that's a breeding ground for violence and anarchy, let that money go to the parent and let the parent put the kids in the school. I am for. Now, how they do it, I know there's a lot of questions, but I'm for the home, I'm for the family, and I'm for freedom. And I don't think the government's got any right to tell you to put a seatbelt on. Now, that's the law, and so we ought to obey the law. But if you want to start trying to make laws to protect life, then you better be checking out McDonald's and fast food places, all the fast food places. And I like McDonald's, as a matter of fact. And but if you're talking about protecting people, making people wear a helmet on a motorcycle, and I think I would wear a helmet if I rode a motorcycle, but I don't think the government's got a right to make me wear a helmet. Now, I think they got a right to put a speed limit, because if I drive too fast, now my reckless driving will hurt someone else. But me not wearing a seatbelt is not going to hurt anybody else. And me not wearing a bicycle helmet or a motorcycle helmet or a bicycle helmet is not going to hurt anybody else. It'll hurt me. That's called freedom. And but government overreach, but don't panic about it, because they're going to overreach. They're going to push their way into your lives, and they're going to push their way into our church sooner or later. They're going to step in and say, you can't preach that and you can't do that. And they're going to push their way into our Christian schools. That's what governments do. They're a bunch of beasts. A leopard and a bear and a lion. And that's what governments do. But if you vote wisely and you walk with God, maybe we'll have some mercy. And so I think you ought to consider, what are you voting? I saw a survey of presidential candidates. Who has the best personality? I could care less. I'm not voting for a friend. I'm voting for a government leader. And I want somebody who can keep evil subdued and keep freedom, and someone who will protect my rights to live like I want. But don't vote race, and don't vote good looks, and don't vote personality. Vote capability. And if I go to work for a business and my boss knows how to make money and he knows how to pay me well, I like the boss. I don't care if he talks funny and sits home and plays video games and reads comic books all day. He's my boss. He's not my pastor or my best friend. And so think about, pray for your country, vote intelligently, and figure some things out. And don't be surprised that our government acts like a bunch of animals, because God defines government after government as a bunch of beasts. And he's going to come back and set up a new government, and it's going to be awesome. And that government will be perfect. But until then, we just got a bunch of sinners leading a bunch of sinners, and God will take care of you. Don't worry. No matter who gets elected, don't worry. Trust God. Everything is all right.